We've just had a Senate vote, and I believe we'll be joined by Senator Mikulski and some others in a few minutes. But General, your time's valuable, and I thought I'd get started. Again, welcome to the committee. This committee has been very supportive, General Bolden, of NASA and has worked to maintain a healthy funding level for NASA while preserving a balanced and, I believe, a productive space program. NASA's work is exciting, as you well know, inspiring and educational. From the photos of a few galaxies captured by the Hubble Space Telescope to the future of humans traveling to Mars, NASA has captured the imagination of school children and citizens across the globe and inspired generations of scientists and engineers. This country has limited resources, however, which requires us to prioritize our spending. NASA spending is not an exception. The NASA budget proposes a total funding level of $18.5 billion, an increase of $519 million above the 2015 level. Such a significant increase should represent balanced funding for NASA's priorities, perhaps not enough. Instead, there's a sizable growth in programs like commercial crew and space technology, while other programs such as science missions and exploration systems development have significant reductions. The cuts to exploration are especially concerning to the committee. The successful test of the Orion capsule last December showcased NASA's innovative plans for the future. This budget could have been an opportunity, I believe, for NASA to boldly support human exploration after years of budget requests in which I believe it was shortchanged. Instead, NASA's budget cuts funding to Orion and the Space Launch System, or SLS, limited our reach in human exploration. A 20% cut to SLS during its critical phase of development risks important investments that have been made in communities across the country. It also risks the success of the program. The budget makes it impossible, a lot of people believe, for NASA to make efficient and cost-effective decisions for the long-term development of a launch system that is being built to achieve the nation's human exploration goals. And while NASA is good at creating charts and talking about moving human exploration beyond our current capabilities, NASA has yet again failed to propose a budget that can accomplish what the agency claims is one of its top priorities. General Bolden, a lot of us are troubled by the overall priorities included in this budget. Requiring key development programs to operate with insufficient funding is irresponsible. And while the proposed funding level of $18.5 billion is a good start, there is much work to do and it must be done to develop a balanced budget that achieves NASA's core missions and its future goals. I look forward to working with you to address some of these concerns. At this point, I want to recognize Senator Mikulski, the Vice Chair of the committee, full committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and Director Bolden. We welcome you. I apologize for being late. We actually had a tremendous victory in the Senate. The Elementary Secondary Education Act passed 21-0 out of the committee. So we were kind of doing a victory lap. Today, I know we're here to examine the NASA budget request of $18.5 billion. It is $5 million more than what was enacted in fiscal 15. As I look at this budget request, I have very deep concerns. I'm concerned that we could be having a threat to the balanced space program that we've all worked together on a bipartisan basis, that we commit yes to human spaceflight. We need a reliable transportation system, both for our astronauts to go where they haven't had a chance to go before and to do important servicing missions. I'm concerned, of course, about what is about to happen to Goddard Space Agency, which I don't think gets a fair shake in this particular appropriations. The Goddard request for science missions is at $3.0 billion. It's $324 million below fiscal 15, and the Goddard is currently operating 35 one-orbit missions. It also is absolutely key to the Hubble Space Telescope and the James Webb Telescope and others. I want to know why Goddard was cut $300 million. And then we, of course, are deeply concerned about other efforts, one of which is the whole issue of satellite servicing. Satellite servicing is absolutely important to our national interest. It was cut by $65 million. It was $130 million in fiscal 15. The whole idea of satellite servicing, as we know, is that our country and our private sector have satellites. We don't want them just to die in space and be space junk. They can be reserviced. There is technology and a workforce at Goddard that knows how to do it. But somehow or another, we don't seem to want to invest in it, or if we do, we sure change it. And then, of course, there's Wallops. We put money into the federal budget in terms of fixing Wallops after the terrible storm that was hit. We know that there was $20 million, Mr. Chairman, that you worked with us on, and I know in a recent conversation with Senator Warner and Kane, they don't feel that Wallops is on track, and if they don't feel Wallops is on track, neither do I. So I've got some questions about all this, and I really need to hear these answers, because I feel, you know, do we have a balanced space program or not?
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to, I know we want to move on, and I'm through with my remarks.
Thank you. Senator Cochran, you want to be recognized?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I just to join you and Senator Mikulski in welcoming our witnesses. We appreciate very much your assistance in helping us identify the priorities for NASA and related activities. We're pleased about the development of the Space Launch System. And as you know, the Stennis Space Center located in my state is very important, not just for the work that it does in the scientific area in research, but also rocket testing, and the infrastructure at Stennis is a very important asset for the entire system and our nation's goals in space. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. General Bolden, again, welcome to the committee. Your full statement will be made part of the record, as you know.
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. At the outset, Chairman Shelby, with your permission, I'd like your indulgence to say a few words of thanks for Ranking Member Mikulski. Senator Mikulski, it is safe to say that all of us at NASA and across the space community were saddened at your recent announcement that this will be your last Congress. You've been a champion for America's space program. This week, we celebrate the 25th anniversary of Hubble's, this week and next week, we celebrate the 25th anniversary of Hubble's mission, and there is no question that we would not have reached this milestone were it not for your unwavering support. Of course, there are still 2 years of work ahead of us in the Congress, and we look forward to continuing to work with you, Chairman Shelby, and the other members of this subcommittee. Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, 5 years ago yesterday, President Obama came to the Kennedy Space Center and laid out what I believe is a bold, transformative agenda for NASA. He challenged us to embark on a journey to Mars. He spoke of extending the life of the International Space Station and increasing Earth-based observation. He called for investments in new, advanced technologies that will not only take Americans farther into space than ever before, but also will provide spin-off benefits and create high-paying jobs here at home. 5 years later, we've made landmark progress toward those goals. SpaceX's successful launch this week is a shining example. The budget you consider today furthers the goals we share of extending our reach into space while strengthening American leadership here at home. It's an $18.5 billion investment that represents a leap into a future of greater discovery, job creation, and economic growth, as well as a healthier planet. Thanks to the hard work of our NASA team and partners all across America, we've made a lot of progress on our journey to Mars. In fact, we have now progressed farther on this path to sending humans to Mars than at any point in the history of NASA. And this budget will keep us marching forward. The support of this subcommittee and the Congress are essential to this journey. The International Space Station is the critical first step in this work. It's our springboard to the rest of the solar system, and we're committed to extending space station operations to at least 2024. Thanks to the grit, determination, and American ingenuity, we've returned ISS cargo resupply missions to the United States, insourcing these jobs and creating new private market in low Earth orbit. Under a plan outlined by the administration earlier in its term, we have also awarded 2 American companies, SpaceX and Boeing, fixed-price contracts to safely and cost-effectively transport our astronauts to the space station from U.S. soil. This will end our sole reliance on Russia. It is critical that we receive the funding requested in the 2016 budget so that we can meet our 2017 target date and stop writing checks to the Russian Space Agency. Our newest, most powerful rocket ever developed, the Space Launch System, or SLS, has moved from formulation to development, something no other exploration class vehicle has achieved since the agency built the Space Shuttle. The Orion spacecraft performed flawlessly on its first trip to space this past December. The SLS and Exploration Ground Systems are on track for launch capability readiness by November of 2018, and the teams are hard at work on completing technical and design reviews for Orion. Our budget also funds a robust science program with dozens of operating missions studying our solar system and the universe. New Horizons is preparing for its arrival at Pluto in July, and Dawn has entered into orbit around the dwarf planet Ceres. Before we send humans to Mars, robots are paving the way. We are at work on a Mars rover for 2020 and have begun planning a mission to explore Jupiter's fascinating moon, Europa. NASA is a leader in Earth science, and our constantly expanding view of our planet from space is helping us better understand and prepare for these changes. NASA has 21 research missions studying Earth, and in the last year alone, we launched an unprecedented 5 more. We also are at work on humanity's first voyage to our home star, a mission that will repeatedly pass through the sun's outer atmosphere. NASA's Hubble, Chandra, and Kepler space telescopes explore the universe beyond our solar system. Hubble's successor, the James Webb Space Telescope, is taking shape right now out in Maryland. And a new mission is in development to extend Kepler's pioneering work in finding planets. Technology drives science, exploration, and our journey to Mars. With the President's request, NASA will continue to maintain a steady pipeline of technology to ensure that we continue to lead the world in space exploration and scientific discovery. NASA is also with you when you fly, and we're committed to transforming aviation by dramatically reducing its environmental impact, maintaining safety in more crowded skies, and paving the way toward revolutionary aircraft shapes and propulsion systems. Mr. Chairman, America's space program is not just alive, it's thriving. The strong support we receive from this subcommittee is making that happen. And I particularly appreciate the generous fiscal 2015 appropriations that you generated. As the President said at the Kennedy Space Center, and I quote, "For pennies on the dollar, the space program has improved our lives, advanced our society, strengthened our economy, and inspired generations of Americans," unquote. NASA looks forward to working with the Congress to continue making this vision a reality. I would now be pleased to respond to your questions.
Thank you, General Bolden. The Government Accountability Office found that NASA's cost estimates for the SLS and Orion projects do not extend beyond the first flight for the combined system, and the 2016 budget before us bears this out. GAO states that NASA's budget estimates do not include production costs for the second test flight scheduled for 2021, the development costs for upper stage development for SLS, or production operations and sustainment costs for Orion beyond the first test flight. GAO further states that NASA has continued to request funding that does not meet requirements. In the case of SLS, I cannot agree more with GAO's assessment of NASA's inadequate funding proposal. My question, General, is this. Considering NASA will have to conduct multiple test flights for SLS, which require additional development and promote production, why does the 16 budget only account for the first test launch of SLS?
Mr. Chairman, the 16 budget supports what we project in the budget horizon as required over the next 5 years to get us to a program, a sustained program of deep space exploration using SLS and Orion. And I would, you mentioned, or I think you mentioned about charts and graphs, and we're not about charts and graphs. We are talking about hardware. The barrel for the engine section of SLS was welded together at Michoud Assembly Facility, and other hydrogen and oxygen tanks are being done. We launched Orion in December. We hot fire tested the RS-25 engines down in Mississippi at Stennis, as Senator Cochran has said. We fired the next milestone test on the 5-segment solid rocket boosters. So I would say that our budget, as we have run it out, has us on the path that we think is necessary to get humans back to deep space and then on to Mars.
In the detailed portion of the 16 budget for SLS, NASA only proposes development funds, as I understand it, through 2018 for an upper stage engine with no funding beyond that date. There's a known need to develop a human-rated upper stage engine for the second test flight. The upper stage, it's my understanding, is on the critical path for the second test flight of SLS in 2021. Yet, it's my understanding that there's no mention beyond preliminary planning for an upper stage required for a mission that is expected to launch, say, 6 years hence. My question is this: why are no funds identified for the anticipated development for an upper stage when that development must be worked on in earnest during 16?
Mr. Chairman, in prioritizing the work that we need to do over this next budget horizon, we recognize that an exploration upper stage is something that will be necessary. You are absolutely correct in that if we had unlimited funds, we would begin development of the exploration upper stage today. But we are given a budget that is no longer flat. I will say it is. People used to say flat was the new up, but the new up is starting to look like you're going to let us work inflation in, so it's no longer flat. But I think the budget that we submitted presents a balanced portfolio of missions for the agency that show us on a timeline to get to Mars in the 2030s.
I'm on my last area that I'll get into momentarily is the International Space Station. When we discussed the budget here last year, I asked about our relationship with the Russians in regard to the space station and what would happen if they were to end the partnership. At that time, you said, and I'll quote, "Should we or the Russians choose to pull out, the International Space Station, as we know it, no longer exists." Those were your words, General. The Russians have indicated that their intent is to separate their portion of the station in 2024. We know that's down the road, which essentially gives the facility an expiration date. My question is this: has Russia formally notified you that this is their intent to separate their portion of the space station in 2024?
Quite the contrary, Mr. Chairman. In my meetings with my counterpart, Mr. Komarov, in Baikonur on the periphery of Scott Kelly's launch about 3 weeks ago, I think he made I wouldn't call it a startling announcement, but he made a very encouraging announcement that, contrary to what we heard, the rhetoric from the Russians, that they were committed to the International Space Station through 2024, and that they did not intend to pull pieces off and start their own space station.
That would be a hard commitment or a soft?
It is no, Mr. Chairman, it is no harder a commitment than ours, saying, and I think if everyone will remember, when the President allowed me to propose that we go to 2024, we said at least 2024.
Okay.
The only hard date we know about space station today is 2028, because that is as far as the engineering analyses of all the partners says, 2028 is about as long as we can keep the space station flying, but we don't want to keep the current space station flying forever. We want to get NASA and other agencies out of low Earth orbit and on to exploration. So the vision that we see
is... The space station was never constructed to be there in perpetuity, was it?
Mr. Chairman, that is absolutely correct. We have never built anything intended to be there in perpetuity. I'm smiling at Senator Mikulski. We didn't build the Hubble Space Telescope to be there as long as it's been, but thanks to her shepherding the program, it is now, we're getting ready to celebrate 25 incredible years.
Moving to another stage of what passed the Hubble because of what we found in the use having the Hubble.
And again, I think you are helping me to emphasize the critical importance of your ranking member.
She did a great job.
She chewed me out, and I appreciated it. When I became the NASA administrator, it wasn't really chewing me out. She told me she wanted me to straighten out the James Webb Space Telescope, and we re-looked at the program. I came in and I went to the president. I came to Senator Mikulski. I said, you know, we are not going to make it, and we need to redo this program. And we're now on schedule, on cost to launch the James Webb Space Telescope in 2018, and that's primarily because of the work and the encouragement of Senator Mikulski.
Thank you. What's the level of commitment from some of our other international partners to operate the space station beyond 2020?
Now that we have the Russians on record as saying that they are with us through at least 2024, other partners are beginning to feel better. That was what they were waiting for, to see the two primary partners get on board with each other. And so I expect that over the coming year or two, just as it was to get everybody to go to 2020, I think in the next couple of years you will see that all the partners will agree that 2024 is the horizon for the International Space Station now.
Is it even possible to operate, as you know it, the space station without the Russian segments, should we choose to operate the station on our own?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Senator Mikulski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Bolden, first of all, thank you for your kind words about me and what I've done and the Hubble telescope. I think also it's a tribute to really bipartisanship, and I know that really very early in my Senate career, I became the chairman of the subcommittee on VA HUD, of which NASA was part of. My colleague at the time, or vice chairman, was Senator Jake Garn. Yeah. I cannot say enough about the appreciation I had for Senator Garn and John Glenn. Bill Nelson wasn't here. And it showed how the astronaut senators and I, with Goddard Space Agency, really worked on the whole idea of a balanced space program. But what we did initially to fix Hubble was because we worked on a bipartisan basis, and the efforts of Senator Garn, and then with Senator Glenn, we had the credibility. Though I had the gavel, they had the credibility, and then NASA had the know-how. And that's really kind of the spirit of the way it is, and I wanted to just acknowledge the role that others have played, and we've kept that. Kit Bond, Senator Shelby. And now as we also look, and you comment on the new horizons, yes, the press is reporting, as is JPL, that we are really now pretty close to that Pluto thing, and that by all accounts and reports, technological reports, we are absolutely on target for its arrival at Pluto on target. But you know, I want to be sure that our best days aren't behind us, and we're committed to a balanced space program. The human space flight, a reliable transportation system for our astronauts to go where they haven't, and also to do the kind of servicing that will be necessary, and along with space science. So then, of course, you know I'm going to ask you about Goddard. And when I saw the president's budget, in which Goddard was funded at $324 million below fiscal 15, when they have 32 on-orbit missions, when they make sure that we're getting that Hubble is targeted and so on, and maximizing its use at its current age and stage, and then managing the satellite construction for two of the major NOAA projects, along with the James Webb. They've got a full plate, and yet you cut them $300 million. Now, can you tell me, number one, why, and what is the consequence of that, and what is the consequences of that? I am very apprehensive that they're doing all this great work, and they've been cut roughly 10%.
Senator, our projection for this year, for this fiscal year, is at the end of the year, because we don't formalize some projects until we're well into the fiscal year. But as a result of that, our estimate is that the Goddard Space Flight Center will end up with about $2.6 billion, their portion of the NASA budget. The projection for fiscal year 2016 is that, given the work that they are about to do, that they are embarking on. An example would be, if you told me today in this hearing to go ahead and authorize the beginning on the tiers for continuous land imaging, Goddard would start tomorrow morning. That is not in their portfolio right now. But we anticipate that Goddard will again in fiscal year 2016, when all is said and done, end up managing $2.6 billion of projects. So it's actually a preliminary look at what we have based on the programs that we have directed to the various.
Or are you saying that you're going to give them more work during the year, and then as the year goes on, you're giving them more money?
They get more work as the year goes by. Subsequently, they get more money. They get responsibility.
In other words,
for more
if they
money.
get more responsibility, does the resource follow the responsibility?
Yes, ma'am. It does. Now, yes, ma'am. I was going to get cute, but I won't.
No, don't.
I'm not.
Because in terms of the time, we have a lot
Yes,
of,
ma'am.
not ground to cover, a lot of space to cover.
Yes, ma'am.
Which then takes us to an area called satellite servicing. And to my colleagues who are also interested in national security, I know we're worried about our satellites, number one, not for the purposes of this hearing, it would be inappropriate, but we worry about the Chinese and what they're doing in terms of any satellite technology. So that's one dimension, not for this hearing, and of course, cross committees. But also we have satellites that our government has, particularly science satellites, and that our private and even nonprofit sector have. Goddard has been developing a technology and workforce to do satellite servicing, so they don't end up space junk. That was funded at $130 million in fiscal 15. They've been cut by 50% to $65 million. Could you tell me the rationale of that? Or is NASA do you not want to do satellite servicing?
Senator, we sincerely, I think we're all on the same sheet of music. No one is more dedicated, for example, to SLS and exploration than I. I share your enthusiasm there. I share the enthusiasm for making sure that this nation is second to none when it comes to being able to maintain and secure our satellites. And with that in mind, I would request that you allow me to come and have a conversation with you, and I can bring staff members or some of your staff so that we can talk about satellite servicing and the challenges that we face there, because it is my belief that with industry, companies like MDA, like ATK, who are already doing, have hardware in hand that does some of the functions that we know we're going to need. We're working with DARPA collaboratively because they're doing some of the things.
Why don't you come and talk to
Yes,
me
ma'am.
about
I would really appreciate that, because I am, to be quite honest, I want to be in sync with the committee, and I will admit, I am the one person in this room who is probably not in sync with you all, because I have, for 4 years, I have pleaded with people to tell me who the customer is going to be, and the potential customers keep telling me they would much rather have me be their customer. And that's, I want to make sure that we are not at odds with American industry, and so I need to talk to you if that would be good. And then I think we can get in sync.
Well,
I'm out of sync.
My time is up. I have another question about wilds, but I say to my chairman of this committee, subcommittee, and the chairman of the full committee, satellites are on my mind, and they are really a big budget, not only in the NASA committee. And whether it's NOAA or whether it's DOD, I'm worried that we don't know how to build them and maintain them and service them. And so we often run into satellite boondoggles. Isn't it? Okay?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
So that's one thing. The second thing is that when they're up there, what do we do with them when they are no longer functional, and can they be rescued? That's the other area of looking at. And then the third, the national security protection of key satellites from those nation states or others that would have a predatory intent. So I've got satellites on my mind, and I would like in the budget.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've used up a lot of time.
It's okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Welcome again to our hearing. We appreciate the cooperation that we've received over time in helping to share our views with the administration officials who've come before our committee requesting funding for programs and activities. It's a pleasure to work with you on all these challenges. As NASA continues to work on development of the Space Launch System, are you satisfied that the administration and the Congress are constructively working together to help reach our goals of our space exploration program?
Senator Cochran, because I'm a part of the administration, I will say I am not satisfied that I have sufficiently worked with this committee, and I pledge that I will do better. It's like I mentioned to Senator Mikulski, I have pledged that I will be here much more than I have been, communicating with members of the committee. I am pleading for the Senate to confirm Dr. David Newman as my deputy because I need the help. And I think that will free me up to be able to spend more time with the members of the committee. But I think, as I said in my opening statement, together the administration and this Congress have done an incredible job over the last 5 years. And I really want the members of the committee to take credit for what you have done, to be quite honest. And I'm not sure that it's like trying to get the administration to take credit. It seems like we're in the middle, and we're really happy about what's been done. We are not fooling ourselves that we've done everything or that we have done, we think we're the best in the world at what we do, but that's not good enough. So I know that's a jumbled answer to your question, but I don't want you to think that I'm satisfied. I am not.
Well,
and I will do better.
Well, specifically, thank you for that. The budget request provides information for us that's very helpful. We want to be sure that we're doing the right thing too, and I want to know what your reaction is to whether we are providing adequate resources for the test infrastructure to support the development of space launch system that would be a credit to our country.
Senator, this committee and the Congress have provided everything that that we have asked for, and so I don't have any complaint about that. I would point out, when you talk specifically about Stennis, the fact that we have had testing done by SpaceX, Aerojet Rocketdyne, DOD is now talking to us about doing testing at Stennis. Blue Origin is now doing testing at Stennis. That in itself says we're being successful at capitalizing on the ability of American industry to augment what NASA does so that we can utilize the funds that this committee gives us to get on with the business of going into deep space. Getting to Mars is our main objective right now, but in order to do that, we need other things. We need the International Space Station to be viable and sustainable, and we're comfortable that we're okay there, but we keep taking little bits of money away from station to do other things in space operations that make me nervous sometimes. We've got to have the money we requested for commercial crew, because that will finish off NASA getting out of low Earth orbit access, and we will have successfully turned that over to American industry, and that puts us one step farther to being Earth independent. Not there, but one step farther. We then need to move out into what we call the proving ground, going back to cislunar space, to orbit around the moon for about a 10-year period of time to develop the technologies that we need to move on to Mars. So we've got a lot of work to do. But this committee, I can't complain about. I thank you for the funding you've given us.
Well, we appreciate that, and we want to continue to do what's necessary to ensure a robust engine testing infrastructure at Stennis, and we think they've earned the right to continue to contribute up-to-date military and intelligence capabilities that would be a credit to our country. And we're looking to develop and test even new rocket engines in the future. What's your reaction to that? Is there a future?
Senator Mikulski said she wanted to make sure that our best days were not behind us. Our best days are in front of us. I can promise you that. I'm not smiling and sounding optimistic because I'm trying to look good or something. I am excited about the future, and I know when I travel around to college campuses or to high schools and stuff around the country or around the world, young people are really excited about what we're doing, and because they see that this is their future. It's not ours. We're passing through. So I think there is no doubt in my mind, Senator, all of you, that our best days are ahead of us.
Well, it looks like we've got a new city there, Stennis as a city.
It is the federal city.
As well as a testing facility.
Yes, sir.
And we appreciate the fact that it has grown to become a federal city due to the multiple federal tenants that are there and seem to be happy with what's going on, and access to people, and a beautiful view along the Mississippi Gulf Coast to boot.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Senator Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Administrator, and it's been very interesting. General Bolden, we're really proud of the work that NASA does in West Virginia with the IV&V program in Fairmont. The employees there are making a great contribution to our state, and I think to your agency and to our country. And it seems to me that the service they provide is critical to complete your agency's objectives, both for the manned and unmanned missions. Can you share some thoughts about IV&V and what you think the future is for that part of NASA?
The facility in West Virginia, but IV&V in general, in the broadest sense, because a lot of its work is not just done there, but it's led out of there, but done other places around the country. The work that's done for NASA is incredible. We have, again, the measure of your success, or the measure of respect that people show for you is to have outside organizations come to you and ask for assistance. And we finished off the work that we were doing for Homeland Security for folk in New York City. So there have been other outside organizations that have asked for the help that IV&V has been able to provide for them. So they provide a very necessary capability to this agency.
Well, thank you. They also, in their program, as you probably know, are inspiring student and educators in West Virginia, have over 100 educator workshops that they've participated in and have had a good impact. One of my areas that I'm interested in, and because I'm the co-chair of the recently formed Diversifying Technology Caucus, you know, we all have a caucus and a different name. I'm a science major myself, there's a great concern, and I share this concern, that a lot of and you spoke about young people, a lot of the STEM education is not as diversified, both by females and minorities. What does NASA look like? You've got a lot of science majors over there. What would you say your I mean, I know you probably don't have this at the tip of your finger, but I'm just curious, do you have it?
Unfortunately, I have it at the tip of my finger because I'm not happy.
Okay, good. I mean,
we at NASA feel that we should be the model for every other agency in the federal government. And as I said before, we've been the best place to work in government for the past 3 years based on the Employee Viewpoint Survey. But we are worried, I'm worried about the inability to maintain, to retain women and minorities in senior levels of leadership in the STEM fields. We have the Deputy Associate Administrator, my Chief Scientist, Center Director Ellen Ochoa, I've got astronaut Katie Coleman, I've got people all over trying to figure out what we're not doing right. We are probably better than most other federal agencies, but that's not satisfactory.
So if you have the figures, just interestingly, since you mentioned what
I want to, I will get that. Let me get it to you,
Sure.
so that I don't guess. But I can tell you the mix of women in the STEM field marries what it is in society, and that's why I say that's unacceptable.
It is unacceptable.
Because we have 51% women in the population, and we're in the low teens of percentage of women in STEM. Now that doesn't say 51% of women of the STEM workforce ought to be women, but it ought to be better than 13 or whatever it is.
Right. I mean, I would suggest, and I think the IV&V program has done this by doing educator outreach. For some reason, it's probably the same thing that Senator Mikulski and I have, we get the question all the time, why aren't there more women in the Senate? Why aren't there more women in public service? And it's one of these things that it's sort of, the numbers have to feed on one another, and it's a slow progress. And so I think by starting in, the early, K through, or elementary, K through 3, you really do have to start there, because when you see what's coming at our young people in terms of how they can, get a lot of knowledge from their phones and everything else, their minds are forming, I think, earlier on what direction they want to go. So I would love to partner with NASA in this endeavor on diversifying technology. I think it's a natural spot, and since we have a good presence in Fairmont, that might be a good jumping off place for some kind of pilot programs to be able to inspire our young women and more minorities to join this exciting field that can be very, very lucrative at the same time and very stable. So I thank you for your service. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just one question and one comment. The James Webb Telescope. You're exactly right, Administrator, that we were deeply troubled about the Webb, that there were cost overruns. Could we meet both the technological targets and not end up, and then also both the technological targets as well as the fiscal targets? Could you tell the committee the status of the James Webb, and have you also addressed the GAO questions about schedule reserves and the Cyro Cooler to make sure that it is? As you know, there's the GAO report, some press reports on flashing yellow lights. Could you tell us, one, are you on target, and have you addressed these concerns raised by these outside oversight?
Senator, I would venture to say we are on target, and we're on target for one primary reason, and that is that after I promised you, then responsibility for the James Webb Space Telescope came into the Office of the Administrator.
Right, and we've come a long way.
And first we had Chris Scalise as the Associate Administrator, and now Robert Lightfoot, and in their respective roles, they, representing me, are in James Webb almost every day. Chris Scalise is now at the Goddard Space Flight Center that has primary responsibility for it. Chris is in it every single day. And I now have a monthly tag up with Wes Bush, the CEO of Northrop Grumman, because we both agree the critical importance of the James Webb Space Telescope, not just to this nation, but to the world. But also, it's critical for both him and me to demonstrate that we know what the heck we're doing. And if we can't deliver it on time and on budget or under budget, then it says there's something wrong. And so we are concerned about the technological challenge of the cryo cooler, but we think that that's getting back on track. We still have about a 10-month cushion in the schedule, but I caution people all the time.
What does the cryo cooler do?
It is actually what enables the telescope to go down to almost absolute zero. It takes it to, oh geez,
It doesn't matter what it takes you to. Cool.
It takes it to really cold. Because it's going to operate 1 million miles away from Earth, and it is an infrared imaging telescope. The reason it is so phenomenal and that it's going to dwarf the capability of Hubble is because although it only operates in the infrared range, keeping it as cold as we do, it is going to be able to look into the atmosphere of distant planets around the billions of distant stars, some that are not even in our own galaxy. So that's what's going to make it really, really good. It would still be phenomenal without it, but that's not what we advertise.
Well,
so
and
we've got to get it
presuming
right.
that this actually happens, do you believe that the completion and successful launch and operation of the James Webb will secure America's preeminence in astronomy for the next 30 or 40 years?
Oh, Senator, there is no question. Nobody, I tell people, now that we're on the Hubble anniversary, I tell people about our crew before we launched on the deploy mission. We absolutely knew that Hubble was going to do something great. We had no clue. And if anybody had asked us if it was going to have taken its place in the pantheon of great scientific instruments, we didn't know that. We are very confident that James Webb will further revolutionize the fields of planetary science, astrophysics. We will know more about this universe as a result of James Webb after 2018 than anybody ever imagined.
Well, I'm glad I went into orbit.
Oh, you and me both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Mikulski. I think Senator Mikulski knew it. she knew what the potential was. She wouldn't have pushed so long and so hard and successfully. And we should always be grateful to her. She must be kin to her cousin Copernicus, you know, in looking out and looking ahead some way. General, I have a couple of more questions. Yes, sir. I can lead into them. NASA entered into, it's my understanding, 2 milestone-based contracts worth up to $6.8 billion in September this last year to finish the development and testing of crewed vehicles. Aside from 5 milestones that NASA required, the contractors were able to add milestones and timelines of their own, with payment only given when a milestone is achieved. NASA has already publicly stated that a significant number of the milestones are being altered. In other words, they have not met them, some with delays of 6 months or more. A lot of us are concerned by the potentially large number of changes and delays as so soon in the program. My question is this. The committee has seen the first quarterly report on the commercial crew program. Who asked for the changes to the milestones, and how will altering of milestone schedules delay the expected date for taking our astronauts to the space station?
Mr. Chairman, I will get you specific answers for the record, but I will tell you how it works.
Okay.
Frequently, we ask for the slip in the milestone because we don't have the money to pay it. That is why it is critically important. We now have 2 contracts. So we are contractually obligated to Boeing and SpaceX to pay them up to $6.8 billion for commercial crew provision. We have guaranteed them 2 missions each, minimum, and up to 6.
You want to meet those obligations.
I want to meet those obligations, and the only way for me to meet them is to...
their obligations.
Oh, they will meet their obligations.
Right.
I don't, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any doubt. I have utmost confidence in both Boeing and SpaceX that they will meet their obligations if we meet ours to pay the bill. You know, that's our obligation is to provide oversight and insight and make sure that we know what they've got to do to provide us a safe vehicle, but I've got to have the money to pay them.
Will you get this information for the committee to evaluate?
I will.
My last question has to do with the Russian seat solicitation. The commercial crew program is intended, it's my understanding, to replace our reliance on the Russians for transport to and from the space station as early as 2017. NASA has put a solicitation out, it's my understanding, to purchase 6 more seats on Russian vehicles at a time when seats on the commercial crew vehicles should be available. I said should.
Yes, sir.
They would.
Yes, sir.
It appears NASA is already purchasing its own insurance policy in case the crew providers are not ready. I don't know that. The current cost of a seat from the Russians, I understand, is about $76 million and will likely be even more for those additional seats. The question I have for you, General, and for the record too, what has NASA seen so far in the continued development of our own crewed vehicles to justify paying Russia hundreds of millions of dollars for seats that should already be covered by the U.S. providers if the U.S. companies meet their milestones?
Yes.
You know, I don't know the situation. Could you explain?
The primary we've seen is lack of commitment on the part of the Congress to fund the program at the amount requested by the President. And the President's request was to meet the contractual price that we negotiated with Boeing and SpaceX. So that's not an estimate.
So your bottom line is you need more money. Is that right?
We only need what we asked for in the budget. I'll be more than happy to take more, but we really need $1.2 billion in 2016 because this is a critical time for us to make 2017 launch date. We need $1.2 billion so that they can complete the milestones that we have both agreed to.
If they can complete them, though, we wouldn't need to spend that money with the Russians, right?
When we have an American capability, then we don't spend any more money with the Russians. We don't pay them for seats anymore. And we may, well, yeah, we definitely won't pay them for seats anymore once we have an American capability.
Let me just share this with you. It's my understanding that in the commercial crew program, NASA initially decided to spread, General, the limited funding resources across 5 companies.
That's correct.
It took NASA 5 years and $1.9 billion to finally pick 2 companies
Yes, sir.
that will share $6.8 billion to develop commercial crew capability. However, NASA continues to blame Congress for a lack of resources, when it was NASA that chose to spend nearly $2 billion on competition. While I agree that competition, we all do, is important, prudent decisions in constrained fiscal environments such as this are very important. My question here is this. In your view, how has a decision to fund multiple companies during an initial competition delayed the delivery of a viable commercial crew capability? I mean, you spent a good bit of money doing that.
Senator, it is my belief that spending that money didn't delay it at all. In fact, it gave us assurance that the 2 systems that we finally selected would in fact be the absolute best. And we are still investing money in some of the companies that were in competition initially, because they're still getting milestone payments under the original Space Act agreements that we had, because they're bringing us benefits that we don't have to develop ourselves, or the 2 contractors don't. If you look at Blue Origin, for example, as a result of the work that they've been doing with engines, we may have a new launch system by an American company with American engines. But that remains to be seen. But some of the development that they did in the area of engines was as a result of collaborating with NASA. Some of the test of components, as Senator Cochran mentioned, was done at Stennis. They don't test the full engine, but they are where they are today, where they're perhaps 2 years away from being able to develop a heavy lift engine of American origin. And that's because of the work that we supplemented.
Well, we appreciate that, but we'll continue to look at that. But it's incumbent upon this committee, as Senator Mikulski has said many times, that we're accountable to the American
Yes, sir.
people and to our colleagues, and you're accountable to us. We're going to have to ask the right and tough questions.
Yes, sir.
about that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, General. This will conclude our hearing. I think we follow up, we might have to follow up questions. Other members very interested.
Yes, sir. We'd be glad to. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and I'll get you the information
Thank you a lot.
that we
Committee's
promised.
adjourned.
Thank you.
Good hearing,
Thank you.
good hearing.